The stars stretched endlessly before the horizon's dawn as it approached the massive orbital station. Captain Daehyun stood on the bridge, his hands clasped behind his back, watching the structure grow larger on the view screen. He had served in Earth's space fleet for 20 years, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. The station was enormous, easily 10 times the size of any human-made structure. Light sparkled across its surface like a city floating in the void. Ambassador Yuna stood beside him, her diplomatic robes perfectly pressed despite the 3-week journey. She held a data tablet containing humanity's entire presentation for the Galactic Council. Every achievement, every cultural milestone, every reason why Earth deserved a seat among the stars. Her fingers trembled slightly as she reviewed the files one more time. "We're ready," Hyunwoo said from behind them. The chief scientist carried 3 cases of equipment, samples of Earth's most advanced technology. Fusion cores, quantum processors, medical innovations that had extended human lifespans by decades. He believed these would prove humanity's worth. They had to. The docking procedure took an hour. When the airlock finally opened, they were greeted by a being that looked like it was made of living crystal. Light refracted through its body in rainbow patterns. This was Chancellor Thryn of the Lumens, one of the Council's founding species. It spoke through a translator device that made its voice sound hollow and cold. "Earth delegation, follow." They walked through corridors that seemed to shift and change color as they passed. Other species moved around them. Creatures with scales, with multiple limbs, with bodies that defied human understanding of biology. Some glanced at the humans with curiosity. Most ignored them completely. The council chamber was circular, with 47 seats arranged in tiers rising up like an amphitheater. Each seat held a representative of a different species. At the highest point sat High Arbiter Velnus, a reptilian creature with golden eyes and scales that shimmered like metal. He was ancient, everyone knew that. He had led the council for 3 centuries. "Humans of Earth," Velnus said, his voice carrying naturally without a translator. "You have requested membership in the Galactic Council. Present your case." Yuna stepped forward. Her voice was steady, practiced. She spoke of Earth's journey from a divided world to a unified civilization. She described how humanity had overcome wars, diseases, environmental collapse, and countless other challenges. She showed recordings of Earth's cities, its art, its music. She presented data on human scientific achievements, developed independently without alien contact. "We are ready to join the galactic community," she concluded. "We offer our innovation, our culture, and our commitment to peaceful cooperation." The chamber was silent for a long moment. Then Velnus gestured with one clawed hand. A holographic display appeared in the center of the room, showing images that made Yuna's blood run cold. Human wars, nuclear explosions, polluted oceans, extinct species, poverty and inequality. Every dark moment of human history laid bare for all to see. "This is what you offer?" A voice called out from one of the lower tiers. "Violence and destruction? Those are our past mistakes," Yuna said quickly. "We've learned from them. We've changed, have you?" Velnus leaned forward, his golden eyes fixed on her. "Your species achieved space travel only 200 years ago. You developed artificial intelligence and immediately feared it would destroy you. You discovered nuclear energy and used it to build weapons. Every advancement you make, you turn into a tool for violence." Hyunwoo stepped forward, setting down his cases. "If you would examine our technology, you would see—" "We have examined it," Thryn interrupted. "It is crude, inefficient. You force matter to obey you through brute strength rather than elegant design. Your computers run hot because you lack the understanding of true quantum principles. Your medicine extends life but at the cost of quality. You are children playing with toys you do not understand." Daehyun felt anger rising in his chest but forced himself to remain calm. He had been a soldier long enough to recognize contempt when he heard it. These beings had already made their decision. This hearing was just a formality. "We may be young compared to your civilizations," Yuna said, her voice rising slightly. "But that means we have fresh perspectives. We can contribute ideas you may not have considered. We can learn from you and you can learn from us." "Learn from you?" Another representative spoke, a being covered in what looked like flowing water. "What could we possibly learn from a species that nearly destroyed its own planet through ignorance? That fights wars over invisible lines on maps? That creates art depicting violence and calls it entertainment?" The questions came faster after that, each one more cutting than the last. Why should the Council trust a species that couldn't trust itself? How could humanity promise peace when their entire history was built on conquest? What value did Earth bring that the Council didn't already possess? Yuna answered each question as best she could, but she could feel the tide turning against them. The representatives weren't asking questions to understand. They were asking questions to justify a decision they'd already made. Finally, Velnus raised his hand for silence. The Council will deliberate. The three humans were escorted to a waiting room. They sat in chairs designed for bodies not quite shaped like theirs. An hour passed, then two. Yuna paced back and forth. Hyunwoo stared at his cases of equipment, wondering if he should have brought different samples. Daehyun stood by the window, looking out at the stars, already planning their departure route. When they were called back, the verdict took less than a minute to deliver. The Galactic Council has reviewed Earth's petition for membership, Velnus announced. We find humanity to be unprepared for the responsibilities of galactic citizenship. Your species is too volatile, too aggressive, too short-sighted. You are denied membership. Furthermore, a trade embargo will be placed on all human worlds. You are forbidden from colonizing beyond your solar system. Any attempt to do so will be considered an act of aggression against the Council. The words hit like physical blows. Hyuna opened her mouth to protest, but Velnus continued. You may return to your system. Perhaps in a few thousand years, when you have matured as a species, you may apply again. This hearing is concluded. The journey back to the horizon's dawn was a blur. None of them spoke until they were safely aboard their ship, and the station was shrinking behind them. Daehyun set course for Earth, his jaw clenched tight. Hyunwoo sat at his station, staring at nothing, his mind already racing through possibilities. Yuna stood in the center of the bridge, her hands balled into fists. The humiliation burned inside her, but beneath it was something stronger. Determination, anger, defiance. They think we're children, she said quietly. They think we're primitive and dangerous. Maybe they're right, Hyunwoo said, but there was no defeat in his voice. Maybe we are dangerous. Maybe that's not a weakness. Daehyun looked back at them, and for the first time since the hearing, he smiled. It wasn't a pleasant smile. They've made a mistake. They've given us a reason to prove them wrong. Yuna nodded slowly. Then that's exactly what we'll do. 15 years had passed since the rejection, and Earth had changed in ways no one could have predicted. The embargo had hit hard at first. Planets that had been preparing for interstellar trade suddenly found their markets closed. Resources that Earth had hoped to acquire from asteroid fields beyond the solar system remained out of reach. The economy stumbled and many people fell into despair. But humanity had always been stubborn. Jinho sat in his workshop on Mars Colony, surrounded by screens displaying complex engineering diagrams. He was 28 years old and had never seen an alien in person. The rejection had happened when he was 13, and it had shaped his entire life. While other civilizations traded technology and resources across the stars, Earth had been forced to innovate alone. Run the simulation again, he said to his AI assistant. The screens flickered, showing a new type of engine design. Traditional alien faster-than-light drives used exotic matter that Earth couldn't produce without Council technology. Jinho's team had spent 5 years developing an alternative. Instead of warping space smoothly, their drive created thousands of tiny tears in reality, stitching them together so quickly that a ship could slip through the gaps. It was rough and elegant by Council standards, but it worked. More importantly, it could be built with materials found in Earth's solar system. Simulation successful, the AI reported. Estimated efficiency at 78% of standard Council drives. Jinho grinned. 78% was enough. Earth didn't need to match the Council. They just needed to move forward. Across the solar system on Europa Station, Hana reviewed resource projections with her team. She had been appointed Director of Solar Resources 3 years ago, and the position had aged her quickly. Her job was simple in concept but brutal in execution. Make Earth's solar system self-sufficient. The new fusion plants on Venus are online, her assistant reported. Energy output has increased by 40%. Hana nodded, marking it on her tablet. Venus had been a dead world, a hellish planet of crushing pressure and acid rain. Human engineers had built floating cities in its upper atmosphere, harvesting solar energy and mining its clouds for resources. It had seemed insane at first. Now those cities powered half of Earth's industrial base. What about the asteroid belt operations? exceeding projections. The automated miners have processed 3 times more raw materials than we estimated. Hana allowed herself a small smile. The Council had thought cutting Earth off from galactic resources would cripple them. Instead, humanity had turned inward and squeezed every possible resource from their own system. Every asteroid became a mine. Every moon became a research station. Every planet became an opportunity. We're not just surviving, she said quietly. We're thriving. On Earth itself, in a secure facility beneath the Himalayas, Subin sat in a dark room watching intercepted alien communications. She was an anthropologist by training, but the government had recruited her for a special project, understanding the species that had rejected humanity. The holographic display showed a conversation between 2 Saurix merchants. Their translator software wasn't perfect, but Subin had learned to fill in the gaps. She had watched thousands of hours of these recordings, studying body language, social structures, cultural patterns. What she had discovered troubled her. The Council isn't what it appears to be, she wrote in her latest report to Admiral Daehyun. Their unity is based on mutual fear, not cooperation. Each species maintains its own military, its own economy, its own agenda. They present a unified front to outsiders, but internally they're constantly competing for resources and influence. The Council's strength is an illusion. She attached evidence to her report. Trade disputes between the Lumens and another species over mining rights, military buildups near contested borders, economic sanctions used as political weapons. The Council maintained peace not through genuine cooperation, but through a complex web of threats and obligations. Admiral Daehyun read Subin's reports with great interest. He was older now, his hair gray, but his mind remained sharp. He had spent the last 15 years building Earth's defense fleet, and every decision had been informed by intelligence gathered from intercepted communications and secret probe missions. The probes were humanity's greatest secret. Small, stealthy vessels launched beyond the solar system in violation of the Council's restrictions. They didn't colonize or mine. They just watched and recorded. The data they sent back painted a picture the Council desperately wanted to hide. Several Council species were in decline. Birth rates falling, resources dwindling, technology stagnating. The Council had existed for 12,000 years, and in that time they had grown comfortable. They had stopped innovating, stopped pushing boundaries. They maintained their power through control of trade routes and technology, but they were slowly rotting from within. They rejected us because they were afraid, Daehyun said during a briefing with Earth's leadership. Not afraid of our violence, afraid of our potential. Jinho's engine design was approved for production. Within months, Earth began construction on a new class of ships. They were ugly compared to the sleek alien vessels humanity had seen at the Council station. They looked like they had been hammered together from scrap metal, all sharp angles and exposed systems. But they were fast and they were tough, and they could be produced entirely from solar system resources. The first test flight launched from Jupiter's orbit. Jinho watched from the control center as his creation punched a hole through space-time and vanished. For 30 seconds, his heart stopped. Then the ship reappeared exactly where the calculations predicted, having traveled 10 light-years and back. The control center erupted in cheers. Jinho just sat down, his hands shaking. They had done it. Humanity had broken the Council's monopoly on faster-than-light travel. Hana's resource networks continued to expand. Automated factories on Titan produced advanced materials using hydrocarbon lakes. Mining operations in the Kuiper Belt extracted rare elements. The solar system became a hive of activity, every world and moon contributing to humanity's growth. Earth's population had access to more resources than ever before. Poverty declined. Education expanded. Life expectancy increased. The embargo that was meant to punish humanity had instead forced them to build something stronger than they ever could have with alien charity. Subin's intelligence gathering revealed something even more alarming. One of her probes had intercepted medical data from a Vrix colony world. A disease was spreading, something the local authorities were trying to contain quietly. She flagged the report as urgent and sent it up the chain of command. "They're scared," she explained during a video conference with Earth's medical research team. "The communications I've intercepted show panic among the Vrix administrators. They're requesting aid from the Council, but the response has been slow." Dr. Jiwon, head of the research team, studied the medical data carefully. "This is a biological agent, possibly engineered. If it jumps to other species, it already has, Subin said grimly. I've found references to similar outbreaks on 3 other worlds. The Council is trying to keep it quiet, but it's spreading. Back on the Horizon's Dawn, now serving as the flagship of Earth's defense fleet, Daehyun received a message from one of the secret probes. It was brief and encoded, but the contents made him immediately call a secure meeting with Yuna, who now served as Earth's Prime Minister. 4 Council species have made contact with the probe, he told her. They're asking for trade, medical supplies specifically. Yuna leaned back in her chair, processing this information. They're violating the Council's embargo? Quietly. They don't want the Council to know. They're desperate, Yuna. The disease is spreading faster than they can handle. Do we help them? Daehyun was quiet for a moment. If we do, we risk exposing our probe network. The Council will know we've been operating outside the solar system. But if we don't, millions might die. It was Hyunwoo who broke the silence on the conference call. He was Chief Science Advisor now, his face lined with age but his eyes still bright. We help them. We've spent 15 years proving we're better than the Council thinks we are. This is our chance to prove it to ourselves. 3 days later, unmarked cargo ships left Earth carrying medical supplies, food, and volunteer doctors. They traveled through secret routes, avoiding Council patrols, and delivered their cargo to desperate colony worlds. Earth asked for nothing in return except one thing: keep it quiet. But secrets rarely stayed secret in a galaxy of 47 species. Word began to spread of mysterious human ships appearing at plague-stricken worlds, saving lives and vanishing before Council authorities could respond. Some species saw it as proof of human interference. Others saw it as proof that humanity cared more about life than politics. Jin-Ho heard the news while testing his newest engine design. Hana heard it while negotiating with automated mining platforms in the asteroid belt. Subin heard it while intercepting panicked Council communications, trying to figure out how humans were evading their patrols. And in her office overlooking the rebuilt New York skyline, Yuna allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. The Council had rejected Earth, called them primitive and dangerous. But when people were dying, it was humanity that acted while the Council debated and delayed. Let them see what we've become, she said to her empty office. Let them understand their mistake. 30 years after the rejection, the Galactic Council faced its greatest crisis. High Arbiter Velna stood before the assembly, his scales no longer shimmering as brightly as they once had. Age had caught up with him, but more than that, the weight of leadership in troubled times had worn him down. The Kepler sector dispute must be resolved, he declared, his voice lacking its former authority. The Sorix and Lumens must cease their military buildup immediately. Chancellor Thrin's crystalline form refracted light in angry patterns. The Lumens have mined those asteroids for 6 centuries. We will not surrender our rightful territory. From the Sorix seats, General Cross hissed his response. Rightful? Your mining operations have extended beyond the agreed boundaries. Those resources belong to the Sorix people. The argument had been going on for months. What started as a minor disagreement about mining rights had escalated into something far more dangerous. Both species had moved warships into the sector. Small skirmishes had already occurred. The Council, designed to prevent such conflicts, seemed powerless to stop it. But the border dispute was only one of many problems. The Crimson Rot Plague had spread to 17 worlds now, and the Council's response had been catastrophically slow. Medical supplies were delayed by bureaucracy. Research teams from different species refused to share data. Each member world seemed more concerned with protecting itself than solving the larger problem. On Earth, Minho reviewed intelligence reports in his office deep beneath Sol. As Director of Intelligence, he had access to every piece of information gathered by humanity's probe network. What he saw terrified and fascinated him in equal measure. The Council is collapsing, he said during a secure video conference with Prime Minister Yuna and Admiral Daehyun. The Crimson Rot has exposed all their weaknesses. Species are hoarding resources. Trade routes are breaking down. Some worlds are closing their borders entirely. What about the plague's origin? Yuna asked. Do we know where it came from? Minho pulled up a file. Our probes intercepted communications from a Lumen research facility. The plague was created there accidentally, during weapons development. They were trying to engineer a biological agent that could disable enemy ships by infecting their organic components. They created it, Daehyun said slowly. And now they're letting it spread while blaming others. Worse than that, Minho continued. They've known about the origin for 8 months and haven't shared that information with the Council. They're afraid of being held responsible. In her laboratory on Luna, Dr. Jiwan worked around the clock with her team. They had obtained samples of the crimson rot from the species Earth had been secretly helping. The disease was vicious, attacking cellular structures in ways that varied across different biologies. What killed a Vrix in days might take weeks to kill a Hydran, but the end result was always the same. It's designed to be adaptable, Jiwan explained to her staff. The Lumens created something that could evolve rapidly to affect multiple species. They just didn't plan for it to escape their lab. Her assistant, a young researcher named Kyung, pointed to a screen showing genetic sequences, but there's a pattern in how it attacks cells. If we can disrupt that pattern, we might be able to create a universal treatment, Jiwan finished, something that works across multiple species. It was an ambitious idea. Council Medical Science had never achieved such a thing because each species jealously guarded their biological secrets. But Earth had no such restrictions. Human medicine had been forced to innovate during their isolation, developing techniques the Council had never considered necessary. 3 weeks later, after countless sleepless nights and hundreds of failed attempts, Jiwan's team had a breakthrough. The treatment wasn't a cure exactly, but it stopped the crimson rot from spreading and gave immune systems time to fight back. More importantly, with minor modifications, it worked on every species they tested. Get this to the worlds we've been helping, Yuna ordered. And this time, don't hide who we are. The decision marked a turning point. Earth's medical ships arrived at plague-stricken worlds openly, their hulls bearing Earth's flag. They brought medicine, doctors, and volunteers willing to work in infected zones. The contrast with the Council's response was stark and impossible to ignore. On a Hydran colony world, Dr. Jiwan herself oversaw the treatment distribution. The Hydrans were aquatic beings, their bodies adapted to water environments. The disease had devastated their underwater cities, leaving entire populations dying in their homes. "Why do you help us?" one Hydran official asked, watching through the transparent walls of the medical center as human doctors moved between tanks treating patients. "Your species was rejected by the Council. We were part of that rejection. We voted against you." Jiwan was quiet for a moment before answering, "Because people are dying. That's reason enough." The official made a gesture with its fins that Jiwan's translator interpreted as deep respect. "The Council told us humans were dangerous. They were right, but not in the way they meant. Word of Earth's intervention spread faster than the plague itself. On the Council station, Velnus raged as reports came in of human ships operating in clear violation of the embargo. But when he tried to organize a military response, he found his support crumbling. "The humans are saving lives," one representative argued. "What are we doing? Debating committee formations while worlds burn. They are violating the embargo," Velnus insisted. "They are operating beyond their system without permission." Then perhaps, came a voice from the Hydran seats, the embargo was wrong to begin with. The Council chamber erupted in argument. Some species supported Velnus, seeing Earth's actions as a dangerous precedent. Others were grateful for the help their colonies had received. Still others saw an opportunity to break free from the Council's increasingly dysfunctional structure. 6 species withdrew from the Council over the following weeks. They announced the formation of the Free Alliance, a new coalition dedicated to voluntary cooperation rather than enforced unity. Within days, they sent official diplomatic requests to Earth. Yuna read the requests in her office, her elderly hands trembling slightly. She was in her 70s now, her hair white, but her mind remained sharp. The irony wasn't lost on her. 30 years ago, she had begged the Council to accept humanity. Now species were begging to work with Earth. "What do we do?" asked Taehyung, her military advisor. He was young, brilliant, and had been trained by Admiral Daehyun himself. "If we join the Free Alliance, we become players in galactic politics. The Council will see us as a threat." "They already see us as a threat," Yuna replied. "The question is whether we help these species or leave them to face the Council alone." Hyun-woo, now in his 80s but still serving as chief science advisor, joined the discussion via hologram. "I've been working on something. A new framework for cooperation. Not like the Council's hierarchy, and not like the Free Alliance's loose confederation. Something better." He shared his proposal, the Nexus Initiative. A system where species shared technology and resources voluntarily, with no central authority controlling access. Every member would have equal say regardless of their military or economic power. Decisions would be made through consensus, and any member could leave at any time without penalty. It's idealistic, Taehyung said carefully. Maybe too idealistic. The council was built on fear, Hyunwoo countered. The Free Alliance is built on reaction against the council. Both are flawed because they're based on negative motivations. The Nexus would be built on something positive, the genuine desire to help each other advance. Yuna studied the proposal for a long time. Outside her window, she could see the lights of the city, humanity's home, the planet the council had dismissed as primitive and dangerous. Send the Nexus proposal to the Free Alliance, she said finally. Let's see if we can build something that lasts. But the council wasn't done yet. In a desperate move, Velnus convinced the remaining hardline members to issue an ultimatum. Earth must cease all operations outside its solar system within 30 days, or face military action. The Free Alliance must dissolve and return to the council, or face the same consequences. The galaxy held its breath. War hadn't occurred between major powers in thousands of years. The council's entire existence was built on preventing such conflicts. But Velnus saw no other option. If Earth and the Free Alliance succeeded, the council's power would end. Everything he had spent centuries building would collapse. In the Kepler sector, Saurix and Lumen warships continued their standoff, neither side willing to back down. On 17 plague-stricken worlds, human medical teams worked frantically to treat as many patients as possible before the deadline. On Earth, Admiral Daehyun reviewed defense plans and hoped they wouldn't be needed. And on the council station, Chancellor Thryn made a quiet decision. He had watched Velnus become increasingly desperate, increasingly dangerous. The humans had saved Lumen colonies from the plague, despite having every reason to let them die. Perhaps Earth wasn't the threat the council had always claimed. In the dead of night, by council time measurements, Thryn sent an encrypted message to Earth. It contained classified information about council military capabilities, defense networks, and strategic weaknesses. The message included only a brief note. Some of us remember honor. When Velnus discovered the leak 2 days later, his rage knew no bounds. But by then it was too late. The information had been shared, and the galaxy had changed forever. The first shot of the war was fired in the Kepler sector, but not by Earth. A Saurix destroyer, its commander, frustrated by months of tense standoff, opened fire on a Lumen mining platform. The platform exploded in a brilliant flash visible from 3 systems away. Within hours, the entire sector erupted in combat. Chancellor Thryn died in the 3rd day of fighting, his ship caught in a crossfire between competing Saurix factions. His last transmission was a simple message broadcast across all frequencies. Forgive us for what we have become. The war that followed wasn't the unified conflict Velnus had imagined. The Council didn't stand together against Earth and the Free Alliance. Instead, old grudges and hidden tensions exploded like stars going supernova. Species that had maintained cold peace for centuries suddenly found reasons to settle scores. Trade disputes became armed conflicts. Border disagreements turned into invasions. Prime Minister Yuna watched the reports from her office, her heart heavy. This was what the Council's rejection had saved Earth from. A system built on fear and resentment, always on the edge of collapse. She had wanted to join that system once. Now she was grateful humanity had been forced to find its own path. The Free Alliance is requesting our help, Taehyung reported during an emergency meeting. 3 of their core worlds are under threat from Council loyalist forces. They don't have the military capacity to defend themselves. What do we have in the region? Yuna asked. 4 destroyer groups and 2 carrier battle groups. Admiral Suhyuk commands the nearest force. Suhyuk was Admiral Daehyun's son, carrying on his father's legacy. Daehyun himself had passed away 2 years earlier, living just long enough to see Earth's fleet become one of the most formidable in known space. His son had inherited his tactical brilliance and his unwavering dedication to protecting Earth's interests. Send Suhyuk, Yuna decided. But make it clear, we're defending the Free Alliance worlds, not attacking Council territory. We don't want this war. We're just ensuring it doesn't spread to innocent populations. In orbit above a Free Alliance colony world, Suhyuk reviewed the tactical situation. 3 Council loyalist cruisers were approaching, their weapons charging. The colony below had 2 billion inhabitants and minimal defenses. Without intervention, it would be a massacre. All ships, battle formation Delta. Suhyuk commanded. Let's show them what Earth engineering can do. The human ships moved with practiced precision, their ugly, angular design somehow graceful in combat. When the Council ships entered range, they found themselves facing weapons they had never encountered before. Earth's isolation had forced innovation in every field, including military technology. The battle lasted 17 minutes. Not a single human ship was lost. 2 Council cruisers were disabled, their crews evacuated before the ships drifted into the planet's gravity well. The third retreated, broadcasting confused messages about impossible human capabilities. Send medical teams to the disabled ships, Suhyuk ordered. Treat their wounded and send them home. Let the Council know we don't fight for conquest. We fight to protect. The message resonated across the galaxy. Species that had feared human military intervention saw something unexpected. Restraint combined with overwhelming capability. Earth could have destroyed those Council ships easily. Instead, they chose mercy. On Earth, Dr. Jiwan received a desperate communication from a Lumen medical facility. The crimson rot had mutated again, becoming resistant to the initial treatment. Without updated medicine, millions more would die. We need samples of the new strain, she told her team. And we need them quickly. The problem was that the samples were located on a Lumen research world deep in Council territory. The Council's fragmentation meant the planet was now contested ground, fought over by 3 different factions. Getting in would be dangerous. Getting out might be impossible. I'll go, said Kyung, Jiwan's assistant. I'm younger, faster, and the research needs you here more than in the field. Jiwan wanted to argue but knew he was right. She approved the mission with a heavy heart. Kyung's ship, a fast courier vessel, slipped through the combat zones using routes mapped by Minho's intelligence network. When he reached the research facility, he found it abandoned, the scientists having fled when fighting approached. But the samples were still there, preserved in emergency storage. He was collecting the last sample when alarms blared. A Sorix patrol had detected his ship. They would arrive in minutes, and Kyung knew his light courier couldn't outfight military vessels. He grabbed the samples and ran. The escape was desperate. Kyung's ship dodged through debris fields, using sensor shadows to hide from pursuers. When he finally jumped to faster-than-light travel, his ship's hull was scarred by near misses and his hands were shaking. But he had the samples. Back on Luna, Jiwan's team worked around the clock to develop an updated treatment. The new strain was more aggressive, but they had learned so much from treating the original plague. Within 2 weeks, they had a solution. Within 3 weeks, it was being distributed to every world that needed it, regardless of whether they were Council, Free Alliance, or neutral. The humans save us again, Avrick's official broadcast publicly. While we fight each other, they remember what civilization is supposed to mean. In the Council chamber, now only half full as species either withdrew or stopped sending representatives, Velnus faced a reality he could no longer deny. The Council was dying. His life's work, 3 centuries of careful leadership, was crumbling. We can still salvage this, he insisted to the remaining representatives. If we unite against the human threat, there is no human threat. The outburst came from a Hydran representative. There are human doctors saving my people. There are human ships protecting colonies from pirates and warlords. There are human scientists sharing discoveries freely while we hoard knowledge like treasure. The humans aren't the threat, Arbiter. We are the threat to ourselves. The speech resonated through the chamber. More species announced their departure from the Council. Some joined the Free Alliance. Others declared neutrality. A few clung to Velnus's hardline stance, but their numbers dwindled daily. Yuna received a visitor in her office, a diplomatic delegation from 14 neutral species. They wanted to discuss Hyunwoo's Nexus initiative, the framework for voluntary cooperation he had proposed months earlier. We've seen how the Council handles crisis, their spokesperson said. We've seen how the Free Alliance struggles with coordination. But we've also seen how Earth operates. You help without demanding submission. You share without expecting tribute. You defend without conquering. We want to understand how you built such a system. Hyunwoo himself attended the meetings, now confined to a wheelchair, but his mind still brilliant. He explained the principles behind the Nexus: equality, voluntary participation, transparent decision-making, and shared advancement. The council failed because it was built on hierarchy, he said. Someone always had more power, more influence, more control. The Nexus removes that. Every member has an equal voice. Every decision requires consensus. If we can't agree, we don't act. It's slower, more difficult, but it's also more stable. What about military defense? One delegate asked. If one Nexus member is attacked, how do you respond without a central military command? Each member maintains their own defense forces, Hyunwoo explained. But we share intelligence, technology, and training. In a crisis, members can choose to assist, but they're never forced to. We believe that willing allies are more reliable than obligated ones. The discussions continued for weeks. Meanwhile, the galactic situation deteriorated further. The Kepler sector war had spread to adjacent systems. The Crimson Rot continued to claim lives on worlds without access to treatment. Trade routes collapsed as species stopped trusting each other. And through it all, Earth kept working. Medical teams traveled to plague zones. Defense fleets protected vulnerable colonies. Engineers helped rebuild damaged infrastructure. Earth asked for nothing in return except one thing, that the species they helped consider joining the Nexus when the crisis ended. Velnus watched his power erode day by day. Species he had led for centuries now ignored his commands. The Council Station, once the center of galactic civilization, became a ghost town as representatives departed. He could feel his legacy turning to ash. In a final, desperate act, he gathered the remaining loyalist forces, a fraction of the Council's former military might, and plotted a strike against Earth itself. If he could decapitate the human leadership, perhaps the galaxy would remember why they needed the Council. Minho's intelligence network detected the preparations immediately. The information was passed to Suyuk, who began moving forces into position. But Yuna made an unexpected decision. Let them come, she said. Let Velnus see Earth with his own eyes. Let him see what we've built. Maybe then he'll understand why the Council failed. It was a tremendous risk. But Yuna had always believed that understanding prevented more conflicts than weapons ever could. She would give Velnus one last chance to choose peace over pride. The Council's remaining fleet began its journey toward Earth's solar system. In their wake, they left a fractured galaxy desperately searching for a new way forward. The old order was dead. The question was what would rise to replace it. Admiral Suhyuk stood on the bridge of the carrier Indomitable, watching the sensor displays as Velnus's fleet entered Earth's solar system. 52 warships, the last remnants of the Council's once mighty military. They moved in tight formation, weapons charged, clearly expecting a fight. All defense platforms online, his tactical officer reported. Planetary shields at maximum, fleet elements in position. Earth's solar system had become a fortress during the long years of isolation. Every planet, every major moon, every strategic point in space hosted defense platforms. Automated weapon satellites numbered in the thousands. The human fleet, though smaller than the approaching Council force, was positioned perfectly to defend their home. Open a channel, Suhyuk ordered. All frequencies. Velnus's reptilian face appeared on the screen. He looked old now, his scales dull, his golden eyes tired. But there was still fire in them, still the pride that had defined his 3 centuries of leadership. Humans of Earth, Velnus said formally, you have violated the Council's laws. You have operated beyond your system, interfered with Council affairs, and corrupted member species with your ideology. Surrender your leadership for trial and your world will be spared. Suhyuk was quiet for a moment. He thought of his father, Admiral Dae-hyun, who had brought the first human delegation to the Council 50 years ago. He thought of all the people who had worked so hard to prove Earth's worth. He thought of the millions of lives saved by human doctors, human engineers, human volunteers. High Arbiter Velnus, Suhyuk said carefully, we mean you no harm, but we will not surrender. Earth has done nothing but help those in need. If you attack us, you attack the very principles of civilization you claim to uphold. Do not lecture me about civilization, human. The Council has maintained order for 12,000 years. The Council is dead, Arbiter. Look at your fleet. 50 ships. That's all that remains loyal to you. 50 ships out of thousands. The galaxy has spoken, and it rejected your vision of order. On Earth's surface, in the underground command center, Prime Minister Yuna watched the confrontation unfold. She was 85 years old now. Her body frail, but she had insisted on being present for this moment. Beside her, Hyunwoo monitored the defensive systems, ready to activate them at a moment's notice. He won't back down, Taehyung said quietly. Velnus would rather die than admit he was wrong. Then we'll have to show him, Yuna replied. She opened her own communication channel. Hi, Arbiter. This is Prime Minister Yuna. You rejected my people half a century ago. You called us violent, primitive, dangerous. I want you to see what we became. With a gesture, she activated feeds from across Earth's solar system. Views of cities on Mars, floating platforms on Venus, research stations on Europa, mining operations in the asteroid belt. Everywhere humans and aliens worked side by side. Hydrons studying Earth's oceans, Fricks engineers sharing their construction techniques, dozens of species who had joined the Nexus Initiative. This is what you feared, Yuna continued. Not our violence, but our potential. You knew that if humanity joined the galaxy, we would show everyone a different path. One where cooperation came from choice, not coercion. Where advancement was shared, not hoarded. You rejected us to protect your power, and in doing so you doomed your council. Velnus stared at the images, his expression unreadable. For a long moment no one spoke. Then slowly something in his posture changed. The rigid pride seemed to crack. I see ships under construction, he said quietly. Your fleet grows. It does, Suyuk confirmed. But those ships aren't meant for conquest. They're for defense and exploration. We're not building an empire, Arbiter. We're building something better. The Council fleet held position, weapons still charged but not firing. Velnus seemed frozen, caught between his desire to strike and his recognition that doing so would achieve nothing. It was Dr. Jiwon who broke the impasse. She transmitted from Luna Medical Station, her laboratory visible behind her, with both human and alien researchers working together. Hi, Arbiter. I'm sending you medical data. Treatment protocols for 17 diseases, including the Crimson Rot. Genetic research that could help the Saurics overcome your species' declining birth rate. Techniques that have saved millions of lives across dozens of worlds. All of this is freely available to any species that wants it, including yours. Why? Velnus asked, and for the first time his voice held no anger, only confusion. Why help those who rejected you? Because people are dying, Jiwon said simply. That's reason enough. The same words she had spoken to the Hydran official years ago. The same principle that had guided every human action since the rejection. Help those in need. Build instead of destroy. Prove through actions, not words. Velnus was silent for a long time. On his bridge, his officers waited for orders to attack. But the orders never came. Instead, Velnus did something that shocked everyone watching. He surrendered. I have failed, he said, his voice barely a whisper. The council is dead because I killed it. My pride, my fear, my refusal to see what was happening. You offered us partnership and we gave you isolation. You offered help and we gave you suspicion. Everything I built has crumbled because I built it on sand. His ships powered down their weapons. One by one they went dark, signaling their surrender to Earth's forces. Suyuk exchanged glances with his senior officers. They had prepared for battle, trained for it, expected it. Surrender was the one scenario they hadn't planned for in detail. What do we do with them? His tactical officer asked. It was Yuna who answered, her voice transmitted from the command center. We take them into custody, treat their wounded, repair their ships, and send them home. We show them the same mercy we've shown everyone else. And Velnus? Suyuk asked. Bring him to Earth. Let him see what we've built with his own eyes. Let him understand what the galaxy is becoming. 3 days later, Velnus stood in Yuna's office looking out at the New York skyline. The city gleamed with lights, its towers reaching toward the stars. Spacecraft came and went from orbital elevators, carrying people and cargo to the colonies above. In the streets below, humans walked alongside aliens, sharing this world in peace. How did you forgive us? Velnus asked. We humiliated your species. We tried to contain you, control you, and when that failed, we came to destroy you. How do you not hate us? Yuna joined him at the window, moving slowly with her cane. Hate would have made us like you. Bitter, afraid, clinging to power. We chose a different path. We chose to build something better than the system that rejected us. The Nexus Initiative. Yes, 32 species have joined so far. More apply every week, not because we force them, but because they see what cooperation can achieve. Velnus turned to face her. What happens to me now? Trial? Execution? Neither. You'll receive medical treatment for your age-related conditions. Our doctors tell me you're long overdue for regenerative therapy. Then you'll be free to go wherever you wish. Though I'd like to offer you something first. She handed him a data tablet. On it was a proposal for a historical documentation project. The rise and fall of the Galactic Council, told from the perspective of those who lived it. Your mistakes don't have to be meaningless, Una said. Help us understand what went wrong. Teach the new generation how to avoid the same failures. That would be a legacy worth having. Velnus looked at the proposal, then at the human woman who had every reason to hate him, but offered redemption instead. Something inside him, something that had been frozen for centuries, finally broke. I accept. 6 months later, the Galactic Cooperative held its first assembly. The meeting took place on a new station, built in orbit around Earth through the combined efforts of 40 species. Unlike the old Council station with its hierarchical seating, this chamber was circular with every representative at the same level. Minseo, Earth's youngest ambassador at 23, stood to give the opening address. She had been born after the rejection, had grown up in a solar system learning to stand alone, and had come of age in a galaxy learning to work together. We gathered today not as conquerors and conquered, not as superior and inferior, but as equals, she said. The old council tried to maintain peace through control. The cooperative will maintain peace through choice. Every species here has agreed to share knowledge, resources, and support. Not because they must, but because they want to. She paused, looking around the chamber at the diverse faces, scaled, crystalline, aquatic, gaseous, and forms that defied easy description. Humanity was once rejected from the galactic community. We were called too violent, too primitive, too dangerous. Perhaps we were all of those things. But isolation taught us something valuable. That strength comes not from dominating others, but from lifting them up. That progress is meaningless if not shared. That the measure of civilization isn't how powerful you are, but how you treat those who cannot defend themselves. Hyunwoo watched the speech from his hospital bed on Luna. He was 95 now, his body failing despite the best medical science could offer, but his mind remained clear, and he smiled as he listened to Minseo articulate the vision he had worked so long to make real. The old man did good, Jiwon said, sitting beside his bed. She had aged too, her hair white, but she still ran the medical research division that had saved countless lives. We all did, Hyunwoo replied. But the work isn't finished. It never will be. That's what makes it worth doing. On Earth, in a small apartment overlooking the ocean, Velna sat at a desk covered in documents and holographic displays. He was writing the history of the Council's decline, documenting every mistake, every moment of pride that led to collapse. It was painful work, forcing him to confront his failures repeatedly, but it was also necessary. The new generation needed to understand what went wrong. They needed to know that even 12,000 years of peace could crumble if built on fear instead of trust. His door chimed. When he opened it, he found Subin standing there with a basket of food. Thought you might be hungry, she said. You've been working for 16 hours straight. Over the past months, the anthropologist and the former arbiter had formed an unlikely friendship. She helped him understand human culture, and he helped her understand the species that had made up the council. Together they were building something valuable, a bridge between the old galaxy and the new. Thank you, Velna said, accepting the food. You know, 50 years ago I would have scorned such kindness as weakness. And now I understand it's the only strength that matters. The Galactic Cooperative grew rapidly in its first year. Trade routes reopened, but now resources flowed based on need rather than political influence. Research was shared freely, advancing every member species. The Crimson Rot was finally eradicated after a cooperative medical effort that involved 23 different species' expertise. Most importantly, when conflicts arose, and they did, they were resolved through dialogue rather than force. The cooperative structure made war impractical. Without a central authority, there was no one entity to conquer or control. Disputes were mediated by neutral parties with solutions that honored all perspectives. Earth remained at the heart of this new order, not through military might or economic dominance, but through the example set 50 years earlier. When rejected by the galaxy, humanity hadn't responded with violence or isolation. They had built something better and invited everyone to join. Admiral Suhyuk retired from military service to teach at the new Cooperative Naval Academy. He trained the next generation of officers not just in combat tactics but in when not to fight. when mercy mattered more than victory. Jinho's engine designs became standard across the cooperative, improved through collaboration with dozens of species engineers. Hana's resource management techniques were adopted by worlds struggling with scarcity. Minho's intelligence network transformed into a cooperative security service, protecting everyone rather than spying on potential enemies. And Yuna, now 95 and confined to bed in her final days, received a message from her successor as Prime Minister. It was a report on the cooperative's latest meeting, where 3 new species had joined and 2 disputes had been resolved peacefully. "We did it," she whispered to Taehyung, who sat beside her bed. He had gray hair now but was still sharp, still dedicated to the vision they had all worked toward. "We proved them wrong." "You proved them wrong," Taehyung corrected gently. "You never gave up believing humanity could be better." "No," Yuna said, her voice fading. "We proved it, all of us. Every human who refused to be defined by that rejection. Every person who chose to build instead of destroy." She closed her eyes, a smile on her face. When she passed an hour later, the news spread across the galaxy. Memorial services were held on 40 worlds, attended by species that had once rejected humanity. They came not out of obligation but out of genuine grief for a leader who had shown them a better way. On Earth, in the rebuilt United Nations building that now served as the cooperative's symbolic home, a statue was erected. It showed 3 figures, a human, a Saurix, and a Lumen, standing together with joined hands reaching toward the stars. The inscription read simply, "From rejection to unity, the galaxy remembers." And in classrooms across hundreds of worlds, young beings of countless species learned the story of how Earth was rejected by the Galactic Council, and how that rejection led to the Council's ruin and the birth of something better. They learned that sometimes the greatest gift is being forced to find your own path, that isolation can breed strength, that those who are rejected often become the ones who change everything. The galaxy had rejected humanity out of fear. In doing so, they created the very force that would transform them all.